Welcome in to the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson. I'm a little out of sorts here. We're missing Mike Renner.
We are.
We got Renner.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
He said he couldn't make it. He's usually our guy on Thursday. I usually just kind of roll out of bed, 3 o'clock, do the podcast with him hosting. Don't put any prep work into it. Now pressure's on.
Yeah.
Okay. It's our preview episode anyway, guys. We've got 3 episodes in the bag already this week. If this is your first time listening, please hit that subscribe button. 4 big episodes every single week. We just came off our mailbag version, probably our favorite one, every week, answering all of the great football questions that you guys bring us. But let's dive into this weekend's games. We're heading into week 6, and we won't discuss the Thursday night game because that's already happened here in podcast world. So whatever happened in that game, I thought it was fun and interesting, and we hope you guys enjoyed it. Let's talk about the Sunday and Monday games.
More to the point, whatever happened in that game, we were 100% right about.
Oh, we definitely predicted it to a T. My team that I chose won. Actually, we picked different teams, so we'll see what happens.
You don't know that.
What happens. All right, let's start with the list of PFF games. We picked them. They're all on the Twitter machine. Go ahead and check those out. San Francisco 49ers traveling to the Washington Redskins. It is our former colleague Bobby Slowick's grand return to Washington. He is now the defensive quality control coach over with the San Francisco, former linebackers coach with the Washington Redskins. I know you guys were wondering about that, but all right, Sam, what are we looking for in this game? Can San Francisco get their first win on the road traveling cross country? You're shaking your head already.
Yeah, poor Bobby. This is unlikely to go well, I think. The 49ers keep finding new and interesting ways to lose the game. Washington isn't a bad team. I think they're playing a bit better lately. Weirdly, this is one of the most unanimous weeks we've had in the PFF picks. There's only a couple of games in the entire slate that aren't unanimous choices, and this isn't one of them. Everybody in the PFF pick them, all, 8, 10 people, however many we're picking, all gone Washington.
Some of the games feel like they're lopsided, but that's, classic NFL. The Niners are going to give them a game, and, Miami's going to challenge Atlanta on the road, and Mitch Trubisky's going to be great, and we'll get to those games. But give me anything on the Redskins defense, because they've had bouts this year where they've looked really good. Now that we know where this Los Angeles Rams offense is, I know they're coming off a bad game against Seattle, but the Rams were torching everyone. They only scored 20 against Washington. Derek Carr and the Raiders, when he was healthy, were torching everyone, and the Redskins held them to 10. And even Kansas City on Monday Night Football 2 weeks ago, they did a nice job containing that Kansas City offense for much of the game. Is this a surprise? How big of a surprise is this for you to see the Washington defense playing as well as they are this season?
I think it is. Almost that entire defensive front, they've gotten good play out of a bunch of interesting players. So Jonathan Allen was the guy that we all loved coming out of college. The NFL seemed a bit quieter on because of the lack of measurables and, a few things like that.
He was dominant in college.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Last year and, his 2 years previous, he was dominant.
Yeah, if it wasn't for those red flags, the measurables and that kind of thing, there would be no reason to dislike him whatsoever as a prospect. He was phenomenal.
Right.
But then, guys like Matt Ioannidis, who we talked about before, Ryan Kerrigan is his usual excellent self. They've gotten good play out of a lot of these guys up front, and it's turned that defense into a much more formidable prospect because you're dealing with a bunch of guys that can bring pressure.
Yeah, so I think that has been, the big surprise there. Ryan Kerrigan, just a guy that's annually just a solid edge rusher. Offensively, Kirk Cousins was much better these last couple games. That Monday night game against Kansas City, one of the better games he's played in a while. And I am the notorious, doubter of Kirk Cousins. In the first 2 weeks, he did not look very good, but he's a slow starter. He looked better the last few weeks. We'll see if he can keep that going. A guy that I thought was elevated by his teammates the last few years. And, there's still questions there with Terrell Pryor, his inconsistency, Josh Doxson, his inconsistency on the outside as well. Let's focus real quick. 49ers, Trent Brown. If you're going to be watching this game, Trent Brown at right tackle playing really good football, and DeForest Buckner on the defensive line playing really good football. So if we're just going to highlight people to watch in the PFF grades, those seem like the two guys. Anybody else besides them?
Jaquiski Tartt has actually played quite well on the back end. Yeah. He's made some really spectacular plays, actually, and is something of I don't know what the good word of putting this is. He's quite spectacular when it comes to launching himself into some plays, whether it's in coverage or just flying towards receivers. There'll be some interesting stuff in there.
It does seem like the Niners are playing aggressively in the secondary so far this season. Really, picking up some penalties, picking up some questionable hits, but they're hitting hard. And look, I like the way that defense is starting to build themselves. But we all take Washington in this one. Miami's going to travel to Atlanta. Miami, I kept saying they're not going to lay 2 eggs in a row. They had a couple duds back-to-back weeks. In London, get shut out by the New Orleans Saints. Last week, Tennessee Titans really struggled. They're going to Atlanta, coming off a bye. And look, Atlanta sitting at 3-1, and I don't think it's been this dominant 3-1. I think the offense as a whole is looking pretty good. I'm a little concerned with Matt Ryan. Zach and I broke him down 2 weeks ago on the QB Analysis podcast. What are you seeing from Atlanta? Evolution of their defense, and does Miami have a shot here? This is another one that PFF was unanimous picking the Falcons.
Yeah, I don't think this Atlanta team is nearly as good as it was a season ago. I don't think it's probably as good as we thought it would be heading into this year. It seems like they're a team that's going to underachieve even by the standards of the regression that I think most people thought they would experience. They're the typical Super Bowl losing team that comes back and isn't anything like the same side they were the next season, and potentially struggles to make the playoffs. We'll see. But it still feels like there's way more there than there is for the Miami Dolphins. Even with the struggles and Matt Ryan not playing at his best, and the fact that they were down to almost Giants levels of receivers during the last game,
right? It
still feels like they're going to take this one.
Yeah, and the defense, look, I didn't think that they were that great last year, but you started to see how they were evolving. For years, the Falcons had built this run first. I used to joke that they were building like they were trying to stop a 1985 offense with all the big run stoppers that they built. Now they have a lot of different contributors rushing the passer. Grady Jarrett, who's been an interior disruptor since he got into the league. Rookie Tack McKinley, who they've needed to rely on even more with Vic Beasley being injured. But even guys like Adrian Claiborne and Brooks Reed, they have guys that are stepping up and rushing the passer. And then these young, speedy back seven linebackers and safeties like Deion Jones, Devondre Campbell, Keanu Neal, all guys grading well for us over these last couple of years. It is a new defense, and I think they are better than they were last year, even when they went to the Super Bowl.
I think that word is key, the speed. They've added an awful lot of speed to this defense over the past couple of seasons, having concentrated on brute force and power, which seemed to be a byword there for, what was the word there? It's toughness. They were trying to get tougher for like 3 years straight. And then that seemed to be the way of achieving more toughness seemed to be just getting larger people there. They were bringing in guys like Tyson Jackson,
right,
because he was big.
They were getting guys that weren't going to be affecting the quarterback.
Yeah.
In a pass-heavy league.
So they've abandoned the whole getting tougher thing and just gone for getting better, which has resulted in them getting a lot faster on defense. So, Grady Jarrett as one of the quicker interior defensive linemen, Tack McKinley, as you said, but on the back end they've got plenty of speed as well. Deion Jones in coverage, a lot of speed in the secondary there as well. So I think that has made them much more dangerous in this league. This league is all about speed now. There's never been a better time to have a small, quick, fast defense.
So the Dolphins now, they've scored 22 points over the last 3 games.
Not ideal.
That includes that shutout against the Saints. And Jay Cutler at quarterback just not instilling a ton of confidence coming out of his retirement, naked staring out into the window, Instagram photos.
Yeah, what was with that?
I don't know. We never dove into that in depth here.
Nor should we.
Probably shouldn't, but it was an odd summer for Jay Cutler, who's now at the helm. But am I crazy for thinking there's no way they're this bad, right? Like they're not. There's a lot of guys playing poorly. Look, the offensive line hasn't been good for a few years now. They look like one of the worst in the NFL, both run blocking and pass blocking. I thought Jay Ajayi, was Mike calling for a little regression out of Ajayi? Or you
Ajayi thought he would Mike thought he would carry on, kick on, and I said, I bet.
Oh, you called the regression. Where are we right now with this?
He's got to be below.
What was the?
He would have a worse rushing grade than he had a season ago.
So his rushing grade's still solid.
Solid, but worse.
3.4 yards per attempt, forced 17 missed tackles on 76. I mean, he's still doing most of the work to pick up his yards, which is the big concern.
Yeah.
200 out of 261 yards coming after contact. But
the important thing there is I'm winning the bet.
You're winning the bet. That's all we're really worried about.
Exactly.
I do think Miami has to get a little bit better over these next few weeks. So this feels like one of those games. I'm definitely picking Atlanta. They're the better team. At some point, Miami can't look as bad as they did the last few weeks, right?
Well, they've got problems in that even when they're good, it doesn't matter because the things hanging off that are bad. So Jay Ajayi is playing well. He's still doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but that offensive line is so bad that there's so much work he needs to do. It's just almost unsustainable. And the quarterback's bad, so there's no passing game to take the pressure off him. On defense, there's actually quite a lot of guys playing well, but the problem is the secondary is a mess. So it almost doesn't matter.
Yeah, that we talked
exactly.
about, right?
It doesn't matter how good the front seven is. If you can just pass it over their heads, they're almost irrelevant.
This could be the game for Matt Ryan to get back on track. Just to touch on him quickly, Zach and I broke him down 2 weeks ago. Go check it out if you want some in-depth Matt Ryan analysis. I think it was the middle of the QB analysis podcast last week. But we just talked about him being dead smack average, 15th ranked quarterback in the NFL right now. I called for statistical regression, but we're seeing a little bit of a regression in his play this year. His accuracy is kind of all over the place. He's not making bad decisions. He's not making those big-time special throws, and it's just a weird year for Ryan. I expect him to bounce back and be fine. And the offense has been pretty good despite that, but this could be the week for them to get back on track. So everybody at PFF is taking Atlanta in this one. Let's go on to another game that is unanimous at PFF, and this could come back to bite us because we're betting on the Baltimore Ravens here.
Yeah, I know.
And they are very inconsistent week to week. The Chicago Bears travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. I'm seeing all these numbers floating around about John Harbaugh at home against rookie quarterbacks and all this fun stuff.
14-1.
But Baltimore is inconsistent week to week. We're talking 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago in London, get smoked by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Shouldn't even be on the same field. Which Ravens team are we going to get?
And that's the thing. I was on Chicago radio earlier today, and they asked me, what are the Baltimore Ravens? I have no idea. They've bounced between being terrible and good, and I've no clue which one is going to show up this week. They have a good defense, which is going to be a problem for the Bears, who are led by rookie Mitch Trubisky. I'm going with Mitch, right? I'm not going back to this Mitchell thing. I thought we'd all agreed that the Mitchell thing was blown out of proportion on an off-the-cuff comment that came saying, actually my mother likes Mitchell.
But
we went back.
My 3-year-old tweet saying that Mitch Trubisky would, has DirecTV and would drive him down the field, but Mitch L. Trubisky's got cable and he's going to throw a game-ending interception. Mitch L. He threw a game-ending interception. I think he's still Mitchell.
Well, so
he's got to earn his name Mitch back.
This is his problem, is he started off his career against the Minnesota Vikings defense, which was always going to be a tough ask.
Right.
And actually, right up until the point he threw the game away, effectively, he'd done okay. He'd done, about as good as you're going to expect a rookie to do under those circumstances. Now he's going to go against the Baltimore Ravens, where the strength is the defense again. So, again, it's a really rough way to start your career for Trubisky, even if, things are improving around him, I guess. I don't think that he's going to be able to get a whole lot done. Jordan Howard isn't going to be able to get much done on the ground because the Baltimore Ravens stuff the run better than anybody else up front, even if they have allowed some yardage there. That offense I think is going to struggle, and then it's going to come down to what Baltimore can get done on their side of the ball, which could be anything the way they're playing.
Yeah, the inconsistency on Baltimore's offense is something to keep an eye on. Just to touch on Trubisky quickly, somebody did mention that they were shocked that Zach and I didn't break down Trubisky this week, and that's our bad. Our apologies. I think we meant to actually break down his debut. We'll get into some Trubisky talk next week on the QB pod, but I want to see that first drive. He looked smooth. He just looked comfortable. He looked pretty good, and then it kind of just leveled off there. One game sample.
Yeah.
But I wonder if he's that guy that when you give him that script and he's comfortable with it, and he can kind of script up some good looks early in the game, but he's got to show that he can maintain it throughout the game, and of course ends with that disastrous pick. But like you said, it was pretty standard average rookie outing until that very bad interception.
Yeah, and it was a standard average kind of performance against a really good defense. One that's good at taking away everything you want to do.
Yes, so, and a very tough defense for a rookie.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Again, you're going to go right back into that with the Baltimore Ravens. So it's a tough way to start your career.
So Baltimore's offensive line, we put our offensive line rankings out this week. I don't know the exact number, but they were much higher than Baltimore fans were expecting, because we were a couple weeks removed from them getting torched by the Jacksonville Jaguars. But other than that, they've been okay. And I think the more we see teams get torched by the Jacksonville Jaguars, the more we were blaming the Houston line after week 1, and we're blaming all these other offensive lines that are getting smoked. Where the reality is maybe it's just the Jaguars' defensive front is so good. But either way, Baltimore has overachieved up front other than a couple games. Ryan Jensen at center playing really well. Ronnie Stanley given his pressures, his clean snaps away to Houston Charity, which is great. So they've got some pieces up front. It's going to come down to Flacco in this pass game, though, which is so inconsistent. Flacco had a solid game against Oakland, but it's just unspectacular.
Yeah, I mean,
overall.
We thought that Jacksonville defense was bouncing back and forth between good and bad offensive lines, but it turns out the Titans may have just had a really good game against them, as opposed to, that offense being anything spectacular, because they've been terrible since.
Yeah, I mean, not everything is just this clean, linear. Team's
nothing
good,
is this season.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. So we're all picking Baltimore. I did say Miami might keep it this close with Atlanta. I think this Chicago-Baltimore game could absolutely be a really close, good game. I still think Chicago's roster is a little better than their record will show now or at the end of the season. So I'm expecting a closer game. I just have to pick Baltimore.
I think more teams right now are within one game of 500, i.e. either 3-2 or 2-3, than have been at this point in the season since like 1984 or something.
It just feels like that.
Yeah, I know. There's actual numbers to back up the fact that it feels like everybody is the same.
So we're all taking Baltimore here at PFF. Cleveland is traveling to Houston. The Cleveland Browns against the Houston Texans. It is no longer a rookie versus rookie matchup. Kevin Hogan has been declared the starter for the Cleveland Browns. Your boy Cody Kessler
he's just disappeared.
He's off the depth chart.
Gone.
Off the depth chart. Deshaun Kaiser, rookie quarterback for the Browns, really struggling. He gets benched for Hogan. On the other side, Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson, statistically off the charts, 9 touchdown passes the last 2 weeks. A lot of garbage time stuff in there against Kansas City and some lucky passes. I hate to, throw the wet blanket on, Watson's statistical output.
Such a hater.
But he's looked really good these last few weeks as a rookie. He has shown his playmaking ability. There's something to this Watson guy and his ability to make plays. And look, I'll get into it in a second, but what are your thoughts on Watson in this game here?
His overall PFF grade is still pretty average, but he's crawling his way out of negative equity because that first game was so ugly.
Yeah, take away that first game real quick.
So that's the thing. And if
you
take away
starts, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's still trying to drag his way out of that negative equity from that first game.
Right.
But outside of that, he's been pretty good. Having said that, people do seem to be losing their minds a little bit in terms of wanting to praise the guy.
Right.
Like there was some little video surfaced of him escaping a sack from Justin Houston by having the ball in his left hand instead of his right, as if this was like the most magical thing a quarterback had ever achieved over the past 10 years. Yeah. But it was just like, this was just what you would do if somebody grabs hold of your right hand as you're holding the ball in 2 hands. You would let go of that hand and you would shake it loose and then you'd go back. It's not like this conscious thing of, hang on, this hand's in danger, let's shift the ball out of reach.
I didn't know that you were a Magic hater as well.
The guy has been playing extremely well the last couple of weeks, but people are losing the run on themselves a little bit. I think the more interesting thing is what the Browns are doing at quarterback, because Kaiser's been playing terribly. But if you're the Browns right now in this situation, why do you bench him?
Oh, look, if you go back
I'm actually asking as opposed to making a point about it.
I wouldn't. You still need to know what you have in Deshaun Kaiser.
Well, the only way it makes sense is if you've already decided what you have in Deshaun Kaiser.
There's no way you know through 5 games. And look, I made the point this whole offseason that because he was their 4th draft pick, 2nd round pick, their 4th draft pick, they are not tied to him for the future. So the 2017 season, you get as much information as possible, what he can do, what he can handle. And honestly, even if he looked great, I'm still in the market for a quarterback. I'm still bringing in another signal caller because you have so many picks next year. There's a lot of intriguing quarterbacks in the draft. But you got to find out more about Watson.
So the second question is, why do you give it to Kevin Hogan?
So my guess is you've got a bigger sample size on what you have from Cody Kessler.
So this is the thing.
And you're guessing from physical limitations, there's not much improvement there.
Do you just work on the basis that they are analyzing these guys after like 5 games? Cody Kessler had 6 games last season or so we know what he is, and we don't like it.
With the analytics,
Deshaun Kaiser starts this week.
I wouldn't be
5
surprised.
games.
I wouldn't be surprised.
He's done. We know what he is. It's not good enough. We've got Kevin Hogan. He's played pretty well in very limited snaps for us. Let's throw him out there. Let's give him 6 games, see what we got there.
It's an interesting theory. I don't hate it. I actually wouldn't doubt it, to be honest. That you get all these guys, you roll them in. They're carrying there's some outside the box thinking there, because it's all about finding a quarterback no matter how you do it, right? It doesn't matter how you do it. This is a throwaway season anyway.
Yeah.
So find a quarterback. Find out what you have. And Hogan, he's looked pretty good in that limited time.
Hogan is an intriguing quarterback. I did probably all of his games over his final 2 years at Stanford. And the first year he was terrible.
Right.
He was one of those quarterbacks that would anger me on a weekly basis for how bad he was. Now,
every college quarterback angers you, Sam. I get messages every day.
Most college quarterbacks anger me.
Like 99%.
Well, I seem to have a habit of picking them on their worst games as well, which doesn't help. But
you just did Sam Darnold's rough game this weekend.
Yes, having done Josh Allen, one of his worst games.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, from what I've seen so far this year, the best quarterback prospect in the nation plays for the University of Texas, El Paso, which I don't think is true.
That's UTSA, buddy. Dalton Sturm.
Yeah.
Sturm. Sturm's good.
Well,
you have Baker Mayfield this weekend, so
there you go.
Better not drag him
I'm
down.
telling you, if he turns up and has the worst game of his career, I'm just done with college quarterbacks.
Hate on Baker.
Anyway, Kevin Hogan was awful that first year, but really got a load better that final year. And that was when they were all talking about Stanford started using this virtual reality stuff, and it was really helping Hogan's
he was the
development.
VR guy.
So he's an intriguing quarterback because he's athletic, more than he looks, because he's kind of, goofy white guy. Those don't tend to be athletic.
Sneaky fast.
Sneaky athletic. Was actually a pretty big part of their run game with Christian McCaffrey. They had a lot of option stuff, and Hogan would take off with the ball. Has a reasonably big arm and loves a downfield shot. He is, if you move the sample size thing low enough, he is the best deep throwing quarterback so far this year.
Unlike 9 of them, but yeah, he's off to a good start.
He's got 9 of them already, and he's only played 67 snaps.
I get it.
The guy's gone deep an insane amount. So he's got a pretty good deep ball. He is athletic, and he hasn't played bad. And the development he showed from year 1 to year 2, VR aided or not, is interesting. It's like the opposite of Kessler, who showed it 1 year and then went backwards. Like, Hogan's moved in the right direction. So I'm kind of curious to see what he can do as a starter.
So the conclusion I've come to is you like every Browns quarterback minus Kaiser. You keep saying give them all a shot. I am intrigued by outside the box thinking, however, and I am all for, seeing what you have.
I'm just a big fan of everything that backs up what I already think. So I didn't particularly like Kaiser as a prospect. Therefore, I'm fine with writing him off.
You're ready to.
I'm kind of curious about Kevin Hogan and Cody Kessler, so I'm all for giving those guys snaps.
Here's my bigger concern with the Browns. We thought that they were going to be the team that was so tough to beat every week, that they'd lose more often than not. They just haven't been competitive enough on both sides of the ball. They lost 17-14 to the Jets. They should have been better. They should have been better than that last week. I'm more concerned with the lack of development by the young guys on the defense, whether it's your Emmanuel Ogbas, Carl Nassib, Joe Schoberts, a lot of guys that we liked that just haven't developed. Jabril Peppers has had his struggles. They had some, intriguing games in the preseason and encouraging, but third lowest pressure rate in the entire NFL on that defense. They blitz like crazy to achieve that low pressure rate. It's just ugly defensively right now for the Browns.
Yeah, hopefully Myles Garrett coming back will be a big part of that. He got a couple of sacks last week. I think that flattered his performance a little bit.
2 sacks on 15 rushes. That was all pretty much that he did. That's bad, but that's good,
but that was literally the only pressure he got, so it kind of looks better than it was. But I think he will make an impact on that defense. They haven't been able to generate pressure without him. The young players on defense, I think everywhere we thought they would be pretty good this year hasn't been quite as impressive. The offensive line we kind of flagged as being potentially one of the best in the league given what they added to it. J.C. Treader hasn't been as good as he's been in the past now that he's a full-time starter. I don't know that Kevin Zeitler has been the player they thought he would be coming in either. It's basically been Joe Thomas has been fantastic. The two incumbent good players have been good, and everybody else they've added to it hasn't risen to the same level. So
Joe Thomas just carrying that offensive line in their offensive line ranking.
So that was supposed to be the platform for them, and it just hasn't been.
Yeah, so I think for the rest of the season, it's all about watching Cleveland's development. For Houston, the point I wanted to make about Deshaun Watson, there were so many times at Clemson you were ready to write him off, and he looked ugly. He looked like he was going to have a bad game. That was like Kansas City the other night. He's just chucking passes right into coverage blindly, but he does have some of this it factor where you just don't want to write him off, and we've seen that so far in the NFL, and he's taken this very untalented offense and made them look pretty good. There's something to that with Watson. The key in Houston now replacing J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless, so something to keep an eye on. But we all picked Houston as well. Next game, oh man, unanimous again?
Oh, we're going to get the hate again.
Detroit Lions at the New Orleans Saints. The Detroit Lions, where are they in ELO this week? PFF ELO always has, look, those are our rankings from Mr. Eric Eager and the analytics team, which just says, here's what we think the team is. Forget their record. Here's what they think, where we think they are. The Lions kept winning games, and we kept putting them lower than Lions fans were happy with, but we 18th. Have them right now at number 18, and, you know, if they lose this game, that looks pretty reasonable. If they win it, we'll get a lot of hate again. But look, the Saints, they're playing on turf, they've given up a passer rating of 148 so far this season.
And we have the Saints at number 22, so that doesn't exactly back up our...
We get they're both, one team's 3-2, one team's 2-2. It's fine.
Yeah.
New Orleans Saints, you have Drew Brees still playing at a high level. You have this inconsistent defense that seemingly just can't play on turf, or they just play well against the Miami Dolphins and a bad Cam Newton week when Cam was struggling. So we still have to figure out what the Saints are defensively. Are they the team that got destroyed the first 2 weeks by Minnesota and New England, or are they the defense that showed a ton of signs of life against Carolina and against Miami the next 2 weeks? Because if this is a defense that has taken that step forward, if it's the last 2 weeks' defense with Breeze and all those playmakers on offense, this is the dangerous team that we thought that they might be coming into the season.
Yeah, the more I look at this, the more I think we've kind of just been mean to the Detroit Lions for once. We came out of this, or at least I'm moving to the idea that the Lions are a better team than we thought they were. They're not as good as a lot of people think they are. It's still a flawed team. There's still a lot of problems, you know, Greg Robinson being the most obvious.
But you're looking at the grades right now, and they're grading well this season. I think it's the names that are grading well. Is that sustainable? That's where the model, I know the model's looking at it saying, well, this guy's overachieving, that guy's overachieving. We don't have faith in that being maintained.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm coming from on this.
But then when you look at the Saints, you're just wondering, is this just, you know, a reputation thing, or are the Saints actually that good either? I mean, there isn't an awful lot to get excited about in the Saints. It's Cameron Jordan again on defense. I guess the defensive backs have been pretty impressive. Marshawn Lattimore in particular is their top rookie.
Ken Crawley's come in the last 2 weeks and been really good. Marshawn Lattimore, when he's been on the field, has been really good.
But Ken Crawley is the kind of Quandre Diggs version.
Yeah,
he's their
right.
Quandre Diggs in terms of, is that going to continue?
No, that's fair. Look, we've been treating the Saints defense like we're treating bad offensive lines, right? Creep back toward average.
Yeah.
The last 2 weeks, they have shown signs of creeping back toward average. Drew Brees currently our number 3 rated quarterback, not turning the ball over a whole lot. I don't think he has an interception, but low on turnover worthy plays. The offensive line's been a little bit worse than we expected coming into the year, banged up and dealing with some injuries. But man, if that defense continues to be reasonable, all I'm saying is they're a dangerous team, and this will be a great game. A great game to see if Matthew Stafford can get back on track as well, because playing New Orleans in the Dome, you usually have some success as the opposing quarterback, and Stafford has not been great the last couple of weeks.
He just needs to get Greg Robinson off the field. That'll help him.
Where do we have Robinson? I love it. I'm just putting it on the spot, left and right here today.
Low.
Where is Robinson ranked right now?
He is not the lowest rated left tackle, but he's pretty close. He is the second lowest rated left tackle, in fact, with a 33.5 grade.
With Odiambo below him?
If I didn't think it was possible to downgrade from George Fant, but it turns out it is.
The left tackle spot in Seattle is just not good. So we all took New Orleans here. Another one I'm okay with. It's going to be a good game, though. Detroit has this fourth quarter magic. They almost, did it again against Carolina, making that bit of a comeback. You need more consistent play from Matthew Stafford, and can this defense continue to overachieve like they have for much of the year?
I am surprised this one is unanimous, because the more we talk it out, the more I would lean back towards Detroit. So I'm kind of surprised nobody else did.
Oh, the more I talk about it, I'm like, man, this NFC South Saints team that I called a sleeper, feeling good about it coming off the bye. All right, Green Bay is going to Minnesota, and Case Keenum, is he getting the start?
Yeah, it looks like it. Sam Bradford hasn't been practicing again, and given how he performed this week with when he just got back, he was hung out to dry and just murdered by the Chicago Bears. So yeah, I don't think he'll be out there.
He just needed to be off the field. That was bad.
Quickly, yeah.
Green Bay, huge win at Dallas. Aaron Rodgers magic down the stretch, and look, they're getting some decent play on the defensive side of the ball. They're another team that just needed to, solidify a few spots after their secondary would just get torched at times last year. Their run defense would get torched at times last year. And I don't think it's this great defense, but you're getting a little bit better play from Clay Matthews. You're getting Blake Martinez in the middle of the defense, leading the league in run stop percentage, just making plays. Nick Perry still rushing the passer pretty well off the edge when he's healthy. Mike Daniels needs some help on the interior. So this, up and down defense for Green Bay, but you get Aaron Rodgers playing at a high level.
Got a strip sack with the club. That was my favorite play of the weekend, I think. He managed to get the strips.
You got to use the club.
He actually used the club to batter out a forced fumble in the strip sack.
More people should use the club.
It's amazing to me still that you're actually allowed to do that. Can you imagine any other sport where you just get to, pad up your hand as an actual physical club weapon and go out and play?
Every time you created a player in Madden, you just threw a club on him, right? That was pretty standard. Did you go double club?
That's what Gene Upshaw, they had to stop him using it, because for 3.5 years he had this hand that was casted up, and he used to cast the thumb as a spike, and he would basically jab it under a guy's helmet right into the throat. And then, by 3.5 years in it, the NFL was, hang on, how long has that wrist been broken for? You can't do that anymore.
Unless you just have a legit broken hand or wrist, right?
Yeah, you can't just cast up your hands as weapons as a general consistent part of your game.
But in Madden, you could throw a club on anybody you want. You don't have to prove that injury.
No.
I was a double club guy. Made for a great look.
No realism whatsoever.
Everybody but Mike Renner took Green Bay in this game.
This is the first time Renner has deviated from what we've given you. All the rest have been unanimous. This is the first time Renner's gone rogue.
Yeah, so he's gone rogue, taking Minnesota. Case Keenum's playing pretty well.
Yeah.
He was our Western and Southern quarterback of the week a couple weeks ago.
He's a top 10 quarterback right now.
Yeah, I think
for
he's
us.
Been ninth so far. We talk about unsustainable. I don't see that as sustainable.
No.
But you got to give him credit. It's not just our numbers. Somebody tweeted about all these other metrics, and he's up there in everything.
He's ahead of Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford. He's ahead of some good and reasonably playing quarterbacks.
He has played well. I always love the battle of Rodgers in that pass offense against the Minnesota defense.
Yeah.
Right? That whole back and forth, and we talk about the Zimmer defense and how difficult it is sometimes. Rodgers had one of his worst games of his career last year at Minnesota early in the season, so we'll see if Minnesota can rekindle some of that magic, because Rodgers had that greatest of all time type of feel again on Sunday.
He's just got this ability to, even against a good defense, throw a dagger into it. You know, you can have him contained for most of the game, and then if they're within a score, you're still in trouble, because at any second Rodgers can just go Aaron Rodgers on you and win the game.
So we're all taking Green Bay. Green Bay offense versus except Renner. Green Bay offense versus Minnesota defense. Can't wait to watch that. The next one, a fascinating AFC East first place on the line battle. We have a three-way tie atop the AFC East. As expected, the New England Patriots, the Buffalo Bills, and the New York Jets are all tied. The Patriots and Jets play each other. The two teams we were saying might be 16-0 versus 0-16 this year, and they're both 3-2. I don't really care about the records.
Nobody does.
New England's a much better team, right? I mean, it's not even close.
I don't even know how the Jets are 3-2. I mean, they're not good, and they haven't even been playing particularly well, but they faced the Browns and the Dolphins and, the Jags. Okay, the Jags are actually reasonable, but
the Jags are one of those Jekyll and Hyde week-to-week teams right now.
But
or it's an impressive win by the Jets. Well, depends on how you look at it.
They played some bad some bad teams that have helped them out. I don't understand how the Jets are winning games. That offense is horrendous still.
It's safe and it's quick passing. They're getting rid of the ball quickly.
But basically, they're taking what you give them, and unless if you stop giving them easy plays, that offense isn't going to score.
More concerning, like defensively, it feels like they're getting the job done, but what happened to Leonard Williams? Where is Muhammad Wilkerson? I mean, Coney Ely has been the most productive defensive lineman for the Jets, a guy that the Patriots released at the end.
And he has no sacks.
They traded a second-round pick for him, a late second-round pick, in exchange for a third, but they gave up capital for Coney Ely, the New England Patriots. They released him late in training camp, and now he's the most productive defensive lineman on a Jets team that has a few names on the defensive line. It's just a weird season. I quit 2017. It's weird.
Yeah, that defense generally, there isn't an awful lot to like about it. Anybody that's playing well is only doing so in a specific area. There's just not much there. Leonard Williams is supposed to be the best player on that defense, really hasn't been himself so far this year. Muhammad Wilkerson, we've seen elite play from him. I mean, he was at one point the second best of those interior defensive linemen behind J.J. Watt.
Right.
And now he looks terrible. He just doesn't look like the same guy at all.
Only 8 pressures, all hurries, not a one quarterback sack or hit through 5 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's just terrible. I mean, Darren Lee looks like a complete swing and a miss in terms of a draft pick. And
off balance all the time.
A guy like Jamal Adams has been interesting, but really the most intriguing thing about him is that he's been deployed all over the field. I don't know that he's been consistently impressive at any one of those things. He's just done a lot of them.
I like Adams. Adams is fine. Look, I made the point. They drafted Jamal Adams and Marcus May, 2 safeties. May's playing pretty well. 2 safeties to kind of slow down the Patriots and their tight end attack, and this is the first week to really check that out. On the other side, New England, the defense has been absolutely torched overall this year. Statistically, we're better against Tampa Bay, but I'm going to make the unpopular statement that the defense wasn't as bad as they looked the first few weeks, and they weren't as good as they looked against Tampa Bay. Even the grades against Tampa Bay weren't that great. It was Jameis Winston was missing throws for 3.5 quarters in that game, and then he finally started hitting throws, or they were dropping passes. They were dropping touchdowns as well.
Or they had some of the dumbest penalties you've ever seen in your life. What Cassius Marsh was doing with that roughing the passer,
that was bad.
That was just insane.
Bad. But my point is, New England's defense, I don't think they're out of the woods as far as clearing things up just because they gave up only 14 to the Bucs.
No.
But I also don't think they're a defense that's going to be giving up 30 and 33 and 33.
I mean, we talked
they
last week about how that defense was giving up a huge amount of points and yardage because of busted plays. So you only have to get everyone on the same page for that number to skew back in the right direction, and then you start to figure out exactly where the team really is, because no team is as bad as their busted plays unless you're doing it consistently, and there's just no way that a Bill Belichick coach team is going to do that all season long.
We're all taking the Patriots because, well, with Brady in that pass game, it is difficult to pick against them. Brady has an AC joint sprain in his left shoulder, playing through injury again. He's a warrior.
He's declining.
He is declining injured. Off of last year's 98.9 grade or whatever it was. He's merely a 91 so far this season, and our top-graded quarterback. I will say this, Brady in New York, there's always one game where Brady in the pass offense, it's just an average game against either the Jets or the Bills. And in New York,
at some point, I mean, we've talked about it before, at some point Brady is going to hit this wall that hits every old player, however it manifests itself.
Yeah, 5 years from now, maybe.
And, we saw Peyton Manning just fell off a cliff physically and his arm went
He wasn't doing
completely.
the TB12 method.
That's true. There was not enough water involved there. But I think the Brady thing might be more close to Brett Favre, who had the best season of his career, arguably, in 2009
Stop
with the
hedging
Vikings.
your bet, Sam. Stop it.
Then in 2010, but the thing about Favre is throughout his entire career, he was just made of iron. You couldn't break the guy. That career, or that start record, the start streak, I think is the most unbreakable record in football. Nobody is going to come close to that. And then in 2010, it just hit him. He just became brittle. Like, he reached the age where his body just, right? He reached the age where his body just started falling to pieces when he got hit. And that never happened to him before. Brady is at that kind of age now where suddenly there's an injury, and he re-aggravated the injury in this game. He had it before. Maybe Brady's just reached the point where relatively innocuous hits are breaking him.
Could be. He's played through these types of injuries before. It's on his left shoulder. We'll see if it affects him. I will say this, though. He's been hit quite a bit these first few games. I don't necessarily think it's because the offensive line has been worse. I mean, they've been worse than last year, but it's because the Patriots are trying to go down the field a lot more. We'll see if it's get back to that quick passing game that they're known for to try to protect Brady going forward, especially with the injury. But we're all taking New England here. Los Angeles Rams are coming to Jacksonville. The cross-country trip, Sam, there's no way the West Coast team can win. We're all taking the Jags.
Long way.
The Los Angeles, this is a great matchup, though. We're talking about a breakout defense on the Jaguars, a breakout offense of the Rams, as well as the Rams offense had been playing all season. I'm absolutely not surprised with the game flow last week against Seattle, where it was just Seattle's defense is still so tough to move the ball against, and Goff isn't, this upper echelon quarterback just yet, and it was just a struggle. Even though Goff, would battle back and make some big throws, it was just an NFC West struggle. I feel like you might see some of that again this week with that Rams offense going up against this fearsome Jags pass rush and these elite corners now with Jalen Ramsey, AJ Boye.
Yeah, I mean, the best cornerback duo in the NFL so far by the looks of it. The really fun matchup, I think, is going to be Calais Campbell going up against Andrew Whitworth, though. That looks like an interesting little battle. Whitworth struggled a little bit with kind of brute power this past week against Seattle. Frank Clark had him a couple of times where he just tried to overpower him at the point of attack and shoved him backwards as a pass rusher. Calais Campbell's like 290 pounds, a giant guy, so that's going to be intriguing to see if he can do that as well.
I love seeing Campbell rush as more of a traditional edge defender.
It's really interesting because he was basically a 100% pure three-tech his time in Arizona. That's what he was.
Just lining up over the guard and shooting the gap. Right?
Yeah, which is a 4-3 defensive tackle. But now we're seeing him as a legitimate, basically a 4-3 end, a 4-3 defensive end.
The Jaguars defense is closing in on being more than just an intriguing story, though. They had 5 interceptions of Ben Roethlisberger, and week to week we're seeing they had a dominant outing in week 1 against the Texans, in week 3 against the Ravens, last week against the Steelers. It's not every week, but their top-end performances are as good as any team in the NFL so far this season.
They're becoming the team that we all thought they have been heading towards for the past couple of seasons. It's just that every time we said it up until this season, they've somehow let us down and not quite achieved it.
It is a fascinating, style when they can hide Blake Bortles, win a game with only 14 attempts.
Also, you know what the most interesting thing about it is that the worst performer on defense might be Malik Jackson, who was one of their best performers coming into this year.
Yeah, and their big free agent signing 2 years ago. But still racking up the pressures, though, which is good for them. At some point, the game flow gets out of hand. Blake Bortles has to win games for them. I want to see more of that.
Well, they're going to need at some point to pass in the second half of games.
One pass in the second half against Pittsburgh. That's crazy. Rams, Aaron Donald's back for that defense.
Yes.
Their defense looked a lot better
Aaron
against
Donald
Seattle
going
as well.
against the Seahawks defense, or the Seahawks offensive line, rather, was always going to be the bloodbath that it typically is.
I think you'll need more dominant outings from their defense this weekend, though.
Aaron Rodgers, when teams try and contain or try and block Aaron Donald on outside zone runs, it's not fair sometimes. You look at it from the end zone view and you think, how does that actually work against normal human beings? Because there's no way it works against Donald. You can't make that block. It's just no offensive lineman can do it.
So I used to say with J.J. Watt, the only way that you could block him in the run game, if you run power away from him, because the ball's never going to cut back. So if you run a zone play, it's not, everybody says you run at him or you run away. If it's a zone play, you can affect both sides of it. You're either blowing it up front side or you're blowing it up back side. When you run power, it's usually staying in the same area. So if you run away from a guy on power, you can hide a guy in the run game. That might be what it takes. But Donald, because he's on the interior, he can blow up anything.
Yes.
So you can't avoid him in the run game. Every now and again, though, he'll overshoot a gap and allow like a 20 or 30-yard run. And I think you're just kind of banking on something like that.
And even then, he doesn't do that as much as J.J. Watt. I mean, Watt has
That's true. Watt
gambles. Yeah. Yes. He deliberately jumps out of his gap to the other side to get around a blocker to be able to make the play.
Right. And more, he's making more plays than he's leaving on the table.
Yeah.
But every now and again, you kind of catch him. So we're all going to take Jacksonville except for Jeff Radcliffe, who is he leading?
He is. By a distance.
I don't want to talk about it.
No.
4:00 games, Tampa Bay traveling to Arizona. Oh, man. You talk about boomer bust quarterbacks. This is the game. Jameis Winston leading the highest percentage of positively graded throws in the PFF system in the NFL, but second highest in negatively graded throws. Carson Palmer, number 2 in total big-time throws, number 2 in total turnover-worthy throws. This is going to be an exciting game. These guys are going to be chucking it all over the yard. What you got?
This is going to look like complete chaos. They're also going up against defenses that could do anything as well.
Jameis they're just looking into a mirror.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hi, you're a younger me,
yeah.
Jameis. You're an older me, Carson.
Let's both just air it out and see what happens. Yeah, it is. It is going to be fun for exactly that reason. You could see a bunch of touchdowns in this game. You could see a bunch of, in fact, you will see a bunch of touchdowns.
I hope they just both go 4 touchdowns, 4 picks. Just really live up to the hype.
I think that's what it has to be, doesn't it? I mean, there's no way that these defenses are strong enough to limit, either quarterback to just a really ugly day where it's nothing but bad. They should have some joy the way they both play, and neither of them is really capable of eliminating the bad plays either. So you're going to see some mistakes.
I thought coming into the season, this Arizona defense would be one of the most fun to watch, and that's different from saying that they're going to be really good. Are we going to look back at, we just talked about Calais Campbell going to Jacksonville. As important as Calais is for Jacksonville, that's how much he's missed in Arizona as well. Because other than Chandler Jones, what are they?
He was the foundation of that defense. I mean, when they had a bunch of guys running into free agency this past offseason, and he was the guy they chose essentially to let walk. I think that was the one guy that they had to make sure they kept. And that
would be a fun defense then.
Yeah.
With all those versatile players that they've added to it, and at least having that rock in the middle, Chandler Jones on the edge, Marcus Golden, before he was lost for the season, normally a solid edge rusher. That would change this defense.
Now, though, we have Adrian Peterson.
Oh, yeah, we have Adrian Peterson going out to Arizona. That's not a game changer, though, is it?
Well,
is it?
We've talked about how does Adrian Peterson have anything left? And, you thought that I think we both thought he might potentially show that in.
I thought he'd be freak athlete, just,
I think he
defy the odds guy.
We don't know. The problem is he found himself behind 2 guys in the depth chart, and he was getting 6 snaps a game, so we don't really know what Adrian Peterson has left yet because
that's fair.
They've never let him get there. Problem is, we're not going to see it in Arizona either for a completely different reason. He may well be the bell cow there and get every carry they've got, but he's going behind one of the worst offensive lines in the game. In fact, the worst offensive line in the game by our offensive line rankings after 5 weeks, albeit most of that negative is in pass blocking as opposed to run blocking. But this is a bad offensive line. None of those backs have had any room to run so far this season. Peterson may well get, 200 carries over the rest of the season, but there's just going to be nowhere to go.
It's also a team that likes to pack it in, run a lot of, gap man type of concepts with tight ends, and their tight ends are struggling run blocking, Jermaine Gresham and Troy Nicholas. So, yeah, he might not have a whole bunch of room. It is interesting just seeing the names, right? Carson Palmer, Adrian Peterson, Larry Fitzgerald, all on the same team.
Yeah.
If you look back, if this was 10 years ago, Fitz is still playing at an extremely high level. Still need to see more consistency out of the compliments, the deep threat J.J. Nelson and Jaron Brown, John Brown, those types of guys. Do you have what did we pick on this? I think I took Arizona.
We both went Arizona, but we are in the minority. In fact, me, and Mike went Arizona. Everybody else went Tampa Bay.
Well, me, and Mike go geographical. Everybody else
exactly.
Looks
long way to go. We know how it works. So we went with the long distance. Everyone else doesn't. They don't understand the perils of long distance travel.
Either way, I think it's going to be an exciting game. There's going to be all sorts of craziness going on in this one. Quick break to tell you about our friends over at draft.com or Draft in your app store. Go and check it out. It is a great way to play fantasy football. We've been doing this for a few months now. The full season leagues are a best ball league, so it takes your best players every single week. You don't even have to worry about waiver wire trades or injuries. If you have all those Giants receivers that went down this week, don't worry. They will take the other receivers on your team and take the best numbers every single week. All sorts of different ways to play over at draft.com. You can play in head-to-head leagues. You can play in 3-team leagues, 10-team leagues, any which way. All different sports, too. NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, even golf. So go check it out right now. And if you guys sign up, make your first deposit, use the promo code PFF to get a free $3 game right now. That's promo code PFF. When you make your first deposit, join in on all the fun over at Draft, the best new way to play fantasy football.
Alrighty, thank you guys. We are back again as usual. I am George Shahouri, and I'm joined by the big guy, Dr. Eric Eager, over there in the lush lands of La Crosse, Wisconsin. What's going on?
Hey, George. Good, man. We did well last week, so everything is looking good for us. A a little bit weird with Dallas and Los Angeles being up by double digits in the second quarter, but we pulled through.
Yeah, I was going to say, you are looking at that was like a 3/4 full cup there, when really all Sunday things got a little dicey. We needed some Jason Garrett magic, what we expect out of Aaron Rodgers, which is greatness. Both of those came through. I thought the funniest part of that, I think we're on the same page with them scoring way too early being kind of like a catastrophic series of decisions. But after he scored, I'm sitting here watching the game saying, well, that's way too much time. And Buck and Aikman, you could tell, thought the same thing, but they were trying to convince themselves that it was the right decision. Like, each one was kind of trying to affirm the other one, but you could just hear in their voice they didn't believe it either. And sure enough, the great one, Aaron Rodgers, led us to the promised land. So hopefully we don't need that type of luck again this week.
That's right. I mean, it is really weird. So this is kind of the analytics part of the PFF stuff, and it is really weird how much people try to convince themselves that like going for the extra point, when you're down 2 in the third quarter is like the playing the numbers game, when it's really not, obviously. And like, there's really a lot of energy spent keeping the status quo in place. And so I love that you also saw that kind of like apologetics being done by the great Buck and Aikman for Jason Garrett, who, there's kind of like one of those decisions kind of every week. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, and I love Buck and Aikman. I think they're great. So, I'm not kind of ragging on them, but I thought it was interesting that Garrett decided to throw to Brian in the end zone. It kind of showed that there just wasn't a lot of thought process going forward. Usually you think about calling a play with the next 2 or 3 plays in mind, and I don't know, maybe he did, and I'm just not giving him credit for it, but it didn't seem like it made sense in any scenario. So I don't know. We'll roll on, move on to this week. We've got a nice return trip planned to Denver, Colorado. Once again, picking the Denver Broncos and picking against the poor New York Eli Mannings. I think he's the only player left on their team, to be honest. 11.5 points.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no kidding. 11.5 points is what I'm seeing. It could be 12. Regardless, we like the Broncos. But you have promised me that you have put together some really compelling reasons why we might not end up winning this one. So give them to me. I'm ready. I'm prepared.
Yeah, I mean, like last week, George, didn't you make reference to the fact that you and I, being the guys that we are, we like to present both sides of the story, unlike the rest of America? So, the Giants, they're 0-5. It's not great. They lost to the Los Angeles Mike Renner Chargers last week. But that being said, they go into Denver. They're facing one of the best pass defenses in the league, but they're equipped with one of the best wide receivers in the league, Odell Beckham. Oh, that's right. He's out for the season. On the other side of the field, the Denver Broncos have a pretty good receiving duo in Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. But luckily, the Giants, have this really good inside-outside corner in Dominic Rodgers. Oh, that's right. He quit he probably still wishes he played for Denver, to be honest with you.
0 for 2.
Yeah. And so, we're trying, as we talk about these things all week, we're going back and forth on Skype trying to determine how the Giants cross the 50 in this game. Aside from maybe a turnover on Denver end, I don't really see it. And so the only thing is do we think Denver can score enough points to, cover a 11.5, 12-point spread?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the size of the spread is the kind of scary part, and I've tried to figure out how they won't score 13 points or 12 points, whatever they need to actually cover this one. And Simeon has been better. I think the part that the place where he's really excelled is throwing to the tight end. He's got the best pass rating in the NFL when targeting his tight ends. And would you care to guess who has a bottom 3 defense against the tight end this year?
Oh man, is it the team that, despite having some decent defenses in recent years, has never addressed the linebacker position?
Wow, you're You're a smart guy. You must have a PhD or something like that.
Nailed it. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Giants not very good at covering the tight end. So I think that's an area that they can attack. And then on top of that, you've got, even if the Giants defense, shows up to play, I think it's a situation where they're just going to be on the field so much and in, kind of disadvantageous field position situations. At some point they're going to wear down, and, the great Trevor Siemian will be able to put some points on the board. And we haven't even discussed the simple fact that Von Miller is rushing against the worst graded right tackle at the moment in Bobby Hart. So I kind of like Von Miller in that matchup, to be perfectly honest with you. So I like Denver by at least 12 points. Do you have any other things besides all of the Giants players that aren't playing in this game that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that's a great stat on Siemian throwing to tight ends. I also think that the times that we've seen Denver really become a good offensive side is when they've run the football. They've scored 41 against the Cowboys by running the ball with Jamal Charles and C.J. Anderson. And while the Giants have a good reputation defensively, in terms of our grading, they've been in their 27th in run defense, and so that's not something that they're particularly strong in. They're also 31st in rushing the passer. And, one of the key aspects of this game is the fact that Denver is at home with the altitude coming off a bye. They're going to be far more fresh than the Giants kind of traveling west. And so, there's really a lot to like about this, this Denver side here going into Sunday.
Yeah, being able to breathe, fairly important when playing football.
Allegedly,
so,
yeah. We'll test that on Sunday night.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think when you step back from it for a second, it's, again, we know how important having a good passing game is. We know how important it is to have good pass coverage. And the Broncos, I think, have a clear and decisive advantage in both of those situations. So that's our lock of the week this week. If you want any more, you can head to profootballfocus.com. We've got our 5 picks out, our column that we put out each week. We are 18-6-1 on the year, 12-3 on the against the spread picks. I don't have a PhD, so I have no idea if that's good or bad.
It's okay.
We'd have to ask Bill Simmons to figure out if that's good or not. Maybe we can look ahead at our schedule, but you can check that out. And if you want the whole set of picks, all the over-unders, all the against the spread picks, get yourself a PFF Elite subscription. It is a fantastic value. And yeah, that's all I've got. We'll send it back to the bar now because I'm sure those guys have refilled their drinks and are ready to go. So we'll see you next week.
All right, we're going to the AFC West. Los Angeles Chargers looking for their second win now, going to the Oakland Raiders. Two teams going in different directions. The Chargers, 1-4. Turns their season around with their win. Oakland, reeling from Derek Carr injury and E.J. Manuel playing football.
Yeah.
Carr's banged up, but should be going. We might need to re-record this to figure out who's actually playing quarterback. But what do you see in this game, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, this one is really all down to whether they do have Derek Carr or not, because E.J. Manuel is just...
Is E.J. Manuel.
He is E.J. Manuel, and there's no way you can pick an E.J. Manuel-led offense to win a game, ever. I mean, it may happen every now and again by luck and accidents, but it's not something you can bank on. So it does look like Derek Carr is going to play in this game, which renders my pick of the Chargers questionable, I would say.
Is it fair to think that the Chargers, at what point in the season does your record become what you are versus reverting back to what we thought they would be coming into the season?
Oh, I think they're not a good team.
But they're not a 1-4 bad, right? I don't think they're 1-4 bad.
No. I mean, when you consider the Jets are 3-2, whatever, the Jets have a winning record.
Right. All I'm saying is fans get caught up in this when they look at power rankings. Sometimes we get caught up in this when you're making your picks. You're just like, okay, 1-3 is going up against, even like last week, the Buffalo Bills versus the Cincinnati Bengals. That was 3-1 versus 1-3. There's no way the Bengals should have been picked based off record, but they did win. It's too early to just focus completely on that.
They've played some tough teams. They ran the Broncos within 3 points. They ran the Philadelphia Eagles within 2, and the Eagles are, a lot of people's second team in the NFL right now.
Powerhouse now.
They lost to the Chiefs a bit more heavily, 24-10, but it wasn't embarrassing. The Chiefs have knocked over a few teams like that. They have played some reasonable teams and run them close. So I think they have some talent. We've seen on defense they have one of the best pass rushing tandems in the league in Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa, who got back on track with authority this past week.
Oh man, he was off to a slow start, but 2-2-6. That's 2 sacks, 2 QB hits, and 6 hurries against the Giants.
Going up against the Giants' offensive line will cure a lot of your pass rushing woes, I guess. But, between those guys, Casey Hayward on the back end, they've got some talent there. But, it isn't a good team.
Okay, I'm with you there. Oakland's offense, though, the inconsistency of Amari Cooper catching the ball. I don't know what's up with that. Michael Crabtree's having a pretty solid season. The offensive line, we said, look, statistically they're looking good in PFF terms. They're definitely being protected by Carr when he's playing in the quick pass game. They didn't look good against Washington in their Sunday night game. So, they should. I still want to see more out of this offense. Even Carr, he was solid but unspectacular when he was healthy, and we'll see if the back injury has any, effects on him. But I want to see him kind of take that next step this year.
Yeah, the entire offense as a whole hasn't been nearly as good as we were expecting it to be. Certainly I was expecting it to be. I thought this offense would be one of the best in the league. It had 2+ wide receiver weapons. It had one of the best offensive lines in the league. It had Derek Carr, who was right on that precipice of becoming one of the next great quarterbacks. Right. He was in that kind of area. And you add Marshawn Lynch to the backfield that had been, I guess, a weak part of that team, with Latavius Murray as their lead back. So that should have been stronger. And just nothing has been as good as it was a year ago.
Yeah, Lynch has been, I don't want to say disappointing. The guy's coming out of retirement, but I don't think he's just been this Marshawn Lynch that he was previously either.
But I don't think there's been that much running room either. He hasn't left an awful lot on the table. There aren't a whole lot of runs where you look at it and say Lynch hasn't really maximized what was there. So I guess he hasn't been maybe as dominant as I thought he might be, but I don't know that that's on him as much as that offensive line not being as destructive as it was a year ago.
I still think a lot comes down to this Raiders defense that coming into the year we knew, okay, Khalil Mack can be a one-man show any given game. And in certain games it's been, hey, Eddie Vanderdoes looks like a nice little compliment to him. And I do think Carl Joseph has emerged as one of the best young safeties in the NFL. So they're getting to this point where you're saying, okay, it's Khalil Mack plus this guy, plus this guy, plus this guy. They need more of that, though.
Yeah.
1 week Sean Smith looks pretty good. The next week he's terrible. Same thing with David Amerson. So much inconsistency in that back seven or even up front. I just need to see more guys emerge on the Raiders defense. I think when I was looking at them as the Super Bowl contender coming into the year, I was kind of banking on some of these guys emerging or that secondary really coming together, and you just don't see it week to week with this team.
I was just banking on that offense being so spectacular that it didn't really matter what the defense did.
Well, there's that too. Mack was shut out last week, by the way. They don't have a whole lot of games where he's just not getting any pressure.
There are no games where he just doesn't get any pressure.
Well, there we go. There's no games where he doesn't get any pressure. Did we run the numbers on this? Was this his worst pass rush game as far as grade goes?
I don't know about grade, but that is the first game of his NFL career where he has not had... No, the second game of his NFL career where he has not had any pressure whatsoever.
It looks like the worst pass rush grade since week 1 of last season. So, again, this is where with the Ravens, they're a couple weeks removed from looking terrible against the Jaguars, and then they come out and shut down Khalil Mack on the other end. So... the Raiders are just right in that boat of inconsistency that this entire NFL seems to be plagued with, which again makes this potentially a really good game. Chargers should be better than their record. Oakland has perhaps a rusty Derek Carr coming back. I expecting a good game. I think I took Oakland, Sam. Is that on my list?
You did, and I took the Los Angeles Chargers based purely on the fact that E.J. Manuel was the starting quarterback, which it turns out is not happening.
Way to prepare. Nice job, Sam.
Thank you.
Pittsburgh's taking on Kansas City. That's not Sunday Night Football. That's the other 4 o'clock game. I think we're on analysis this week. We're splitting this game, Sam?
Are we?
I think we are.
Sweet.
I'm going to look at Kansas City's offense nice and closely. An unbelievable Kansas City offense right now. You and I broke down Alex Smith in this week's hashtag Actually. Go check that out. SI Now.
And on the website.
Now, and on sportsillustrated.com.
No, I mean, article on Alex Smith on the website.
Oh, you had an article on the site
our
as well.
website.
On our
ProFootballFocus.com, just in case you don't know who that is.
Go read about Alex, and you can see all of the numbers and all of the great things that have changed. The one number that stands out to me, really big, plays lasting over 2.6 seconds. Mentioned this with Zach on the podcast. Leading the league in passer rating, and I know he's leading the league in overall passer rating, but this is a number that he was in the 70s last year. This year he's over 120.
He's leading the league in a bunch of different areas. It's weird. So he's got the league's best passer rating on deep passes. He's got the league's best passer rating under pressure. He's got the league's best passer rating on plays that extend over 2.5 seconds.
Also has 5 touchdowns on passes thrown behind the line of scrimmage. So he has been padded.
Yeah, touchdown passes.
Touchdown passes. In air quotes, absolutely.
That would be interesting, actually, to weed out the shovel passes from his stuff and see if he's still leading the league in pass rating on all these plays.
Oh, I think he's up. So that's the thing. Like, I don't want to take anything away from him.
Well, obviously the deep pass one won't be affected by that. I doubt under pressure would be either. Because
I doubt he's throwing a shovel pass over 20 yards.
Yes.
Is what you're
or
saying.
Under pressure would be. I doubt.
Yeah, those aren't under pressure.
So that actually shouldn't affect much.
Right. So I don't want to take anything away from Alex Smith other than the fact that the stats are still like a little inflated by these easy passes. But overall, he's playing unbelievably.
I think it's just it's really just that bottom line number. Just the general overall passer rating is the one that's being inflated by those. The advanced numbers are the ones that aren't being inflated by those, and those are the real keys to his play. It's the fact that in these various facets, he's a completely different guy than he's ever been before.
Right.
And the interesting thing to me is, we talked before, is if you can just get him to being an averagely aggressive quarterback. You know, you don't need him to turn into Carson Palmer.
What'd you call him before?
Pathologically conservative.
Yeah, you love that.
I do. It's a good line.
It is
a
good line. It's good. You deserve it.
And more to the point, it's accurate, which is why I like it.
Pathologically conservative.
So what I was saying is you don't even need to turn him into Carson Palmer. You know, he doesn't need to become one of the most aggressive downfield passers in the league. He just needs to not be pathologically conservative. And the interesting thing is that all the deep numbers are incredible and all that kind of stuff. He almost has the same number of passing yards on deep passes that he had a year ago already after 5 games. He's got 440 passing yards, 3 touchdowns on deep passes this year. He only had 2 touchdowns on deep passes last year, and he had 500 and something passing yards on deep those. But when you look at the frequency, last year he was the lowest, I think the second lowest quarterback in terms of frequency with which he went deep. This year, it's not like he's in top 5. He's just become a middle-of-the-road quarterback. I think he's 15th in terms of how often he'll go deep. So,
which is a big
jump. It's a huge jump, but B, he didn't need to go all the way. You know, he's just had to become a standard aggressive quarterback. He hasn't had to go the full distance and turn into a YOLO passer. You just turn Alex Smith into a regular quarterback in terms of aggressiveness, and he becomes a top 5 quarterback.
And that's why I felt like I needed to defend him through the years. I kept saying there were so many games where he showed it. How do you get it out of him? How do you get it out of him consistently week to week? Beyond just Alex Smith taking that step forward, that offense, man, they're designing things very well. We're talking about the shovel stuff. I mean, that's option-y. I mean, that's college-y option type of stuff that they're adding to the offense, which has been fantastic. They're taking advantage of Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Kareem Hunt might be the MVP candidate on that team, the way he's run the ball and caught the ball out of the backfield. And again, defensively, I will describe them defensively the same way every week. They just make things difficult on opposing quarterbacks. I don't care what Deshaun Watson's numbers were last week. They have the ability to just make every throw difficult by playing tight man coverage, by rushing the passer with guys like Justin Houston off the edge. So they're a good, well-rounded team.
More man coverage than any other team in the NFL.
It makes for some difficult, low-percentage throws. And if you look at how quarterbacks, other than Watson, have fared against Kansas City compared to their normal statistical numbers, man, they are
especially
night and day.
Especially with Marcus Peters there. I mean, you can beat him for some big plays every now and again, but when you're playing man coverage, or when you're reading man coverage going up against him, you need to understand where he's going to be, because he won't always be where you think he's going to be.
We broke that down a couple weeks ago, his ability to just jump routes even
so
when it's
while
not
you
to
may
him.
be able to go after him a bit, you also need to be aware of him on every single play in a way you don't have to be with other teams that play man coverage.
On the other side, Pittsburgh, interesting team overall right now. So Zach and I tried to debate a little bit about this Roethlisberger thing, and you and I talked about it on Monday. He's doubting himself, right? This guy who has 2 Super Bowl wins, is a pretty competitive guy through the years, and if it was just a slump and he didn't even open his mouth, you'd say, okay, he's going to bounce back. He's old, but he'll bounce back. Now he's actually doubting himself, actually out there verbally doubting himself after threatening retirement this offseason. Can he bounce back closer to Roethlisberger-type form? Because he still has the ability to make those big plays, but, man, the consistency and the bad decisions we got to get rid of.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's always made a lot of bad decisions, but he's always offset that with a lot of... He's always been one of your kind of Jameis plus quarterbacks in that he'll make high-variance stuff, he'll make good and he'll make bad, but there's always been more good than bad, and so far there isn't. But he isn't the only problem on that offense. I think their issue is that there's problems all over the place. Le'Veon Bell hasn't looked like himself at all. That hesitant style that he has that's so unique... when you couple that with an offensive line that's playing well and understanding how he's working behind them, it's almost unstoppable, because he basically baits defensive players into cheating out of their gap and trying to find him behind the line of scrimmage, and then he just jumps into the gap that they were in and takes off for a significant gain. When the offensive line isn't playing as well, the holes aren't as big to begin with, and the gaps just aren't there, so it just looks like he's confused and hesitant. You know, when he gets to the line and does this dancing routine waiting for something to open up, and it never does. You know, I think teams have actually gotten to the point where they understand what he's doing, and they're defending him more,
I think that's
more disciplined.
Thing. Right, they're kind of slow playing him a little bit.
So this offensive line isn't grading as well because the defenses aren't giving them the open gaps that they were a season ago, and now Le'Veon Bell's style just looks... I don't know what the word is. It just looks more hesitant, and it's not as purposeful. So he's not gaining as much on his own. Couple that with Roethlisberger struggling. Couple that with Antonio Brown being the only guy getting anything done as a receiver, and that the entire offense is just in a funk.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the thing, is the way teams are playing it. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago. You saw before Bell got hurt in the AFC Championship, New England was kind of doing that. This whole
that's kind of what they do anyway.
It's what they do anyway, but it almost felt like it was even more extreme.
Yeah.
And I compare it to keeping Aaron Rodgers in the pocket, keeping Russell Wilson in the pocket. Defenders are saying, we're just going to hold our gap. We're not even trying to win our blocks. We're trying to hold our gap. So I do think that has taken away some of those holes. Offensively, though, you still have Antonio Brown. You still have Martavis Bryant. I'm not ready to write off this offense. Fascinated to see what happens with Roethlisberger. Defensively, hilarious to watch this team sometimes. They are stunting and twisting every which way and blitzing all over the place. It is creative, to say the least. I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to it, but it felt like they were either stunting into a gap to stop the run or stunting away from the gap and leaving a hole against the run instead of maybe just playing straight man, straight up, because they've got some talent on that defensive front.
Yeah.
But guys are just flying all over the place, and it looks a little helter-skelter so far.
So we all have Kansas City in this one, another one of the unanimous picks, as in fact are both the remaining games.
So, yeah, we took Kansas City because they're undefeated. They're at home.
Well, yeah, and they're not in a funk the way the Steelers are. So
don't be surprised if this is the Roethlisberger bounce-back game, though. All right, New York Giants at the Denver Broncos. Is this 4 out of 5 home games for Denver to start the year?
I don't know.
I believe it is.
Stop asking me questions to which I don't know the answer without looking them up.
I've done a poor job of, you're supposed to usually prep your partner here for stuff you're going to talk about.
Yeah. At least the questions you're going to be asking that he won't know without looking at them.
I have not even planned it, but have completely put you on the spot. Yes, they've been home for 3 out of their first 4 games. This will be 4 out of 5 for Denver. They're 3-0 at home, so of course they're going to win again at home against the New York Giants. The Giants can't possibly go 0-6, Sam.
Can they?
Our reasoning the last couple weeks.
Yeah, you did it, and then I did it, and now I think we've both just said, no, screw it, they're going 0-6.
So here they are at 0-5.
Yep.
They lost their top 4 receivers last week to injury.
In a game.
In one game. Odell Beckham, Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard, Dwayne Harris all go down to injury.
I doubt they keep records for this kind of thing, but it wouldn't surprise me if that has never happened before.
That is incredible.
It's staggering.
And those are big names, too.
Especially it's not like they were just
The top
all
three
four of them
games.
left at some point. You know, Odell Beckham is done for the year.
3 out of
Marshall
4.
is done for the year.
I believe Harris is, too.
Yeah.
Sterling Shepard's banged up.
So it's not like they just lost him, to a hamstring strain. He'll be back next week. I mean, these guys got shut down in the one game.
So it's Sterling Shepard, a banged-up Sterling Shepard, and
Roger Lewis.
387 total career snaps.
Yeah.
Between Roger Lewis, Travis Rudolph. Who's the other name that's escaping me right now?
Tavares.
We just did Tavares King.
There you go.
From Georgia. We just did a video on this on our. You can check out some videos that we do on NBC.com as well, NBCSports.com, previewing this game. So Eli doesn't know who he's throwing to. We've got one of the worst offensive tackle pairings in the NFL between Eric Flowers and Bobby Hart going up against Von Miller and Shaquille Barrett. And a Denver defense, we called for this Denver regression this year.
Yeah.
Maybe underestimating the fact that this defense is still talented. And going back to the Denver home deal.
That's huge.
They're really good at home.
No, they do have a legitimate home field advantage, obviously being at Mile High. They've got some players that are playing really well on defense. I think guys that we didn't expect to be significant parts of this defense have been. Shelby Harris, the preseason stud, is still playing well. I mean, Domata Peko is still playing well, for heaven's sake. There's no way we could have been possibly expected to anticipate that. That shouldn't happen.
Denver, though, now so let's say Denver goes to 4-1 with 4 wins at home.
Yeah.
Are they setting themselves up to be just the classic fool's gold? Because the one road game that they had at Buffalo, completely different team.
Yeah.
Lost to the Bills. And we might look back, right now the Bills look like they're playing pretty good football, but we might look back at the Bills as like this 8-8 team, 7-9 team, a little bit closer to what we thought they were, and that's a bad loss. So Denver has a lot more road games coming up. They might just be fool's gold if they come out, even if they come out of this on top and sit at 4-1.
Yeah, I think they probably will be. They won't be as good as they've looked, but some of those road games that they have, they get to face the Chargers, they get to face the Miami Dolphins, they get to face the Indianapolis Colts all on the road, and obviously the Raiders inside the division. The other ones are a little tougher. They got to go to Washington, face the Redskins. They got to go to Philadelphia, face the Eagles, and obviously a game on the road against Kansas City is the big one there. But I mean, it's not the hardest schedule in the world for a team. If this team is going to be vaguely legit and be a playoff team, you're going to be expected to go to Miami and win a game. You're going to be expected to go to Indianapolis and win a game. At which point they're going to have a few of these road wins in the bank. They're going to be in there or thereabouts. I mean, this is a team that's probably going to be battling for a wild card spot behind Kansas City.
I think that's fair. You just don't see a schedule like this a whole lot, where it's 4 out of 5 at home to start the season.
Yeah.
Then they're going to have 3 on the road. You just don't see a whole lot of 3 weeks in a row on the road or 4 out of 5 at home. So just an interesting breakdown for the Broncos. If you guys are looking for a trench matchup to watch, Big Snacks every week. You want to watch him,
Always.
Giants nose tackle, but going up against Matt Paradis from the Denver Broncos, who's been one of the better centers in the NFL the last couple of years. So that'll be a fun little matchup.
No Rogers Cromartie for the Giants. For reasons that we can't quite decipher at the moment.
Explain to our listeners exactly what happened. He just went in and
it depends who you listen to. There's 2 sides to this. One,
to every story.
The one side, either Rogers Cromartie decided he quit the team for a few days for reasons that we haven't been told, and therefore was suspended, or he was getting suspended and therefore left the building. Either way, he is suspended now. And we don't know for how much longer, but he's unlikely to be playing in this game, given that he's suspended.
The more you look at it, are the Giants the anti-Eagles, where coming into the year it's like depth at defensive back, depth at wide receiver, questions on the offensive line. The defensive line didn't necessarily have questions, but now they've regressed back a little bit. The overworked JPP and Olivier Vernon.
There's no way that's a workload thing. I'm just not buying that.
Oh, it's the workload. Analytics team, we're studying the workload this week. We're going to go check it out.
Yeah, I mean, they've just been bad. I mean, even we thought that Landon Collins would be Defensive Player of the Year kind of deal, given how he was last year and in preseason. Even he hasn't been as good because everything else around him has been so bad. Basically, Damon Harrison has been this team. Everything outside of Damon Harrison has been ugly.
Well, he's worth the price of admission Sunday night. Watch Big Snacks. Damon Harrison. It's not Eli versus Peyton. It's Eli against Trevor Siemian, who has made some improvements. Made some improvements this year. I want to see him continue it. after really
There's
struggling.
no way you can sell me on that as a reason to put on this game.
Eli Simeon?
Eli versus Simeon.
No, I said Big Snacks is the reason why
No,
you're tuning
that's
in.
fine. I'm just, you then kind of went as that, as like an extra reason for your ticket. I'm not, no.
Speaking of games to tune into, Monday Night Football,
Oh, no.
Indianapolis Colts going to the Tennessee Titans. Oh, man, they were like, we got Andrew Luck, we got Marcus Mariota. It's these two young quarterbacks, future of the NFL, upstart AFC South teams, and we're getting Jacoby Brissett and Matt Castle.
What the hell happened to the Tennessee Titans? After 3 weeks, we thought this team was maybe one of the class teams in the AFC. They lost on opening weekend to the Oakland Raiders, who at that time we thought were a Super Bowl quality team.
And we're like, hey,
AFC
that's
class.
an okay
fine.
loss.
They then went and beat up on the Jacksonville Jaguars, the only team that had been able to do that. They then beat the Seahawks, real statement game, knocking off one of the class teams in the NFC. Then they allowed the Houston Texans to put up 57 points on them, and then lost to the Miami Dolphins. What?
Well, Matt Castle was a quarterback last week, and he had one really big throw that got negated by an offensive penalty. Other than that, averaged about 4 yards per attempt. The Texans game in which Mariota got hurt in week 4, that was a bit of a shocker going into that week. And the Titans are just one of these inconsistent teams right now, right? Where we thought the offensive line was going to be a strength and they had enough pieces defensively, and we're just not seeing that right now.
No, not at all. I mean, the offensive line got handled by the Miami Dolphins, which is not supposed to happen. I mean, the Miami Dolphins have a pretty decent defensive front, but it shouldn't be knocking over what we thought was one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, especially given how that offensive line had already controlled more formidable defensive fronts than the Miami Dolphins have, like the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't know what the Tennessee Titans are right now. No idea.
Nobody does, but they should be a more talented team. The Colts have become, look, I don't know if they're slightly intriguing. They're still in this, I think they're just in this rebuilding type of mode. They just threw not a ton of resources, they just threw a ton of names at the defense. Guys like Jabal Sheard, John Simon, Al Woods, Jonathan Hankins. They got all these, outsiders coming in these last couple of years. And a lot of them are playing pretty well.
Jacoby Brissett has a higher PFF grade right now than Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Cam Newton, Carson Palmer, Ben Roethlisberger, among others. I could
Quietly.
go on. I mean, he is. If there's one thing about this team that's intriguing, it's Jacoby Brissett.
They found a reasonable quarterback. The official stats are not backing that up the same way, but throw for throw. He had a disastrous interception against the 49ers.
Especially given that he tried to do the same thing before. Took like 2 stabs at throwing the pick six.
And so that was bad. Other than that, he was on his way to a really strong game anyway against the 49ers. And did the same thing against Seattle, where he left a couple passes inside or whatever, but he makes a few big plays and he makes these disastrous decisions, but as a percentage of total plays, he's generally finding the open man and doing a good job.
This is the thing about quarterback play in the NFL. There are so few of these guys that are Aaron Rodgers, or even have any shot of becoming Aaron Rodgers ever, that the guys that show you something become interesting, because everybody's chasing the next 10 guys. The top 10 are teams find them, they get lucky, and those guys are never going anywhere.
Right.
It's the next 10 that are the intriguing ones, because those are the guys that everyone's chasing for. You need one of them to win anything, and you can win with them. So, if you find one of these guys that becomes viable, suddenly that transforms your franchise. I mean, okay, the Colts already have Andrew Luck, so it's more what they can trade him for later on.
That is such a valuable piece, though.
But exactly, yeah.
If they get to the end of the season and they're like, hey, we can get something for Jacoby Brissett as part of this whole rebuild around Andrew Luck.
Like, it's interesting for another team, even if it's not interesting directly for the Colts, because they already have their franchise guy.
On paper, the Colts had one of the worst defenses in the entire league coming into the season. But like those guys that I mentioned, Jabal Sheard still has something left. He's been their best overall player, I'd say, on the defense. Like I said, John Simon's been okay. Al Woods can stop the run. Jonathan Hankins has played better in a more realistic role for him instead of playing that 3-tech opposite Damon Harrison on that defensive line of the Giants. Even Rashaan Melvin, who's been getting torched everywhere he stops, has played pretty well.
Hell,
so
they've got pressure from Marcus Hunt.
Yeah, so I like look, I completely wrote them off. I said if Andrew Luck was healthy, this is the worst roster he'd ever be surrounded by, and he's had some bad ones in recent years. I feel like they've started to find some intriguing transitional pieces here while they start to rebuild through the draft, and I think that's why we're watching Monday Night Football here, Sam. I talked everyone into watching this game, watching what Indianapolis can do defensively. Jacoby Brissett grading well, and can that Tennessee offensive line get back on track? All that said, we all took Tennessee.
Yeah, unanimous again.
Is that about it?
Yep, that's the slate.
I want to let the fans vote on Renner here. He stood us up.
Okay.
He Rennered us.
He did.
And I just want to know if we should invite him back to host the weekend preview podcast next week as well.
Alternatively, write in and tell us what his punishment should be.
Yes, what is Mike's punishment for complete standing? Like, this is a violation of team rules.
Yep.
We don't necessarily have a punishment designated for when you violate team
Well, we don't
rules.
have a suspension system in place, nor do we have a finding system in place.
Yeah,
So we're going to need some sort of forfeit system, again, which doesn't exist yet, but this is why we have listeners.
Do we suspend him for the first half of next week's podcast? The second half of next week's
first drive,
podcast?
we bring him in after the first
One
game.
drive. Like, I will introduce the first game next week.
We
and
get
then
in the
he
first
jumps in.
game, and he comes in after that.
Yeah, we might suspend him for the entire podcast. We might give him more analysis games. How about he has to do our 4 o'clock analysis game this
That
weekend?
would be good. I like that one.
Yeah, so Ben, maybe you should sign off on that one. So we would like to hear from you guys, the fans, all weekend, what needs to happen to Mr. Mike Renner after completely standing us up to do a little PFF high school work, is what it was, which is very valuable and important. But
Well,
he
yeah,
stood us up.
no. His problem was he forgot about it until then. It's not like he was one or the other. He could have done both of them if he just,
He
remembered.
could have. So he deserves to have some sort of suspension or punishment or whatever it might be. We'll let the fans decide. But that does it for us this weekend. Please hit that download button because we're having a ton of fun with this. 4 episodes per week. Don't forget to go check out PFF Edge over at profootballfocus.com/PFF-offers. That is the best place to go get Edge. And then PFF Elite, we're giving it away still. Give us a 5-star review, leave your Twitter handle or an email address, a way to get in touch with us, and we will give away the PFF Elite $200 product, which now contains...
Well, now you can get it monthly.
Oh, wait, PFF Elite is monthly now, potentially monthly, if you want. It's up to you.
Yeah, not compulsorily. That's not a word.
No, that's
mandatory.
Not a word. It's not mandatory. So we have some people that love DFS, or that just need their signature stats, or just need that extra fantasy boost at this point of the year, and they said, we need a monthly option. So we did give the monthly option for Elite, and we also have player grades now for all the last 2 years for games. Game grades.
Game by game, yeah.
Are available. I would suggest just kind of get into the Elite community, and then we just keep adding surprises and new things to it. That's probably the best way to describe it. So just get in there, get involved, meet some cool new people, and we'll just surprise you with new fun all the time. So that does it for us this weekend. Everybody have a great week, and we'll chat again on Monday with the Week 6 review.